The downtime for 2023 has been interesting. Off recruitment alone, you could somewhat see a shift in the league's landscape with some influential players and coaches moving on to other clubs. A team like Penrith, for example, who have had the league in a chokehold for the last few years. They've essentially been nerfed. Because of this, I do see a tighter competition overall, not just within the top 8, but the Fringe and the Outsiders will be interesting to watch as well. That's how we'll do this ladder prediction. I'm going to break it down into 4 parts. The Outsiders from 14 to 17, the Fringe from 9 to 12, and the 8s, which will be divided into 2, the top 4 and the bottom half of the 8s. So, the Outsiders, starting with the Wooden Spooners, I've got the Dolphins. It's tough look. I'm gassed to see the Dolphins enter the league, but recruitment's been a little iffy. They didn't get their marquee guy, but they have got a solid forward pack full of tried and tested veterans and hard workers. Is that enough? Is the Wayne Bennett effect enough? I don't think they are, and I don't think they'll be winning many games this season. I think they're neck and neck with the Dragons when it comes to the Wooden Spoon, which brings me to number 16. The Dragons, although they have a gun like Ben Hunt in their side who's in arguably career best form, like the Dolphins, I struggle to see them win many games this season based off recruitment and just Ben Hunt's supporting cast in the spine. They'll be under the microscope this season, overly scrutinized and criticized. I wonder how it'll play out. In 15th, I've got the Warriors. Going over recruitment, I think they've done alright. It's actually typical Warriors type recruits, if you know what I mean. Stylistically, they've signed similar players over the years, and they've always had a forward pack that would rival even the elite teams in the comp. What I'm mostly interested in is how they'll function as a unit, and that'll all come down to how well they're coached. And I guess I don't really see them elevating or regressing. I guess if they do come 15th, that'll be one better than last year, even though it's the same number. Yeah, not much on the Warriors. And to round off the Outsiders, in 14th I've got the Newcastle Knights. Recruitment wise, they've done a much better job than previous years. I actually think they've done a bad job at building around their marquee guy in Kalen Ponga. This year, however, they've seemingly plugged the right holes, with an organiser like Jacko joining the fray and a multi-dimensional lock in Adam Elliott. For me, it's their forward pack that I'm iffy on. They seem uninspired, lethargic, maybe too comfortable. My hopes for the Knights is that we see more of players like Brayley, Mann, and of course KP, who have been a little unlucky when it comes to injuries. It starts to get spicy here. In 13th, we've got the Gold Coast Titans. I'm really excited for the Titans this year. The signings of Foreign and Virals will be massive, no doubt. Not just them as individuals, I'm keen to see how they'll influence the players around them, because as we all know, the Titans have got strike pretty much all over the park. I'd like for them to solidify their fullback role. At the moment, they're caught between 2 players, Jaden Campbell, AJ Brimson. I personally think they should give Bremo a run at centre. If they're trying to keep both of them on the field, Bremo has all the attributes to excel at centre. He has the speed to take away player space, reads the game well, and that X factor, he's got plenty of it. I was low-key hoping that Slater would pick him for States of Origin. You could say he'd be wasted at centre, but like I said, he has all the attributes to be one of the elites in that position. In 12th, I've got the Bulldogs. Recruitment-wise, it's been another good year. Good enough to break into the top 8 though. Man, it's hard to tell because they looked pretty good at the tail end of the regular season. They've got a young and exciting pack. Reid Marnie and Kickout coming in is massive. Kickout, a genuine game breaker. You take that along with the promise they showed in spurts throughout the season last year, and you bring in a guy like Ciro, who's by all reports an elite coach. The vibes are up, baby. The Dogs could skyrocket this season. At 11th, I've got the West Tigers. We all know they killed it in recruitment. They've got world-class edges coming in Papali'i and Bateman, and a world-class rake in Api Koroisau, who is one of those players that will elevate to those around him. Stylistically, I think he's a perfect fit for a guy like Dane Laurie, assuming he plays at fullback. And like the last couple teams we talked about, they have just as many young and exciting players. Again, we'll try not to loiter. We kind of did with the Titans, but we'll move along. I could talk about these last couple of teams for 10 minutes each. At 10th, we've got the Canberra Battlers, the Canberra Raiders. In terms of gains, they got Paisami Saulo, they got Danny Levy coming in. Nothing really sticking out to me for the Raiders. Honestly, we could have easily chucked them even lower. I'm expecting much of the same from Canberra. I'm expecting them to hang with teams. Basically, you know what you're going to get with the Raiders, you know their identity, and I'm wondering if their forward pack can back up what was a pretty crazy run last year. I felt like I was saying every week that they'd eventually tire out, but Joey Tapine, Joshua Pali'i, they led from the front. Ninth, we have Manly Warringah Sea Eagles, and now I'll be honest with you, it's getting pretty tricky the closer we get to the top of the ladder. For Manly, the general consensus is no Turbo, no finals. In my opinion, I think even with Turbo, I could see them not making the 8. More often than not, when he is playing, teams do figure out how to shut him down. But geez, they looked good in the preseason. But so did the crowd, and both will have equal impact on the regular season. And with a guy like Josh Schuster, a completely different playing style to Kieran Foran, who's, you could say he's more effective, could be more impactful, definitely gives them more looks. I think he shares the heavy load in terms of how Manly will place come the end of the regular season. The top 8, coming in at 8, I've got the Brisbane Broncos. Definitely biased. One thing I'll say about the Bronx is they have the players to play finals this year. Hell, they had the players last year to play finals. You could argue they had the players the year before that. Reece Walsh will be an absolute weapon this year. If healthy, he'll be top 3 for Dally M's. Hell, he'll probably take it out. But yeah, a fully fit Reno, a fully fit Reece Walsh. I'm expecting career best from the departing players in Tom Flegler, Herbie Farnworth. If this side doesn't make the 8, I want Kevy Walters to walk the plank. Coming in at 7, we have the Melbourne Storm, purely off the strength of Harry Grant, Cameron Munster, and Jerome Hughes. Those boys, along with Ryan Pappenhausen, when they're on, are about as close as you can get to a team achieving flow state footy. I'll be breaking down what I mean by flow state footy in a future one-off video. They've got some decent players coming in for some absolute weapons that are departing the club, and it's for that reason why I have them out of the 4. I was considering dropping them out of the 8 if I'm being completely honest, but like I said, the spine, there's no way they missed the 8 with a spine like that. At 6, we have the Parramatta Eels. Some monumental losses in Reid Marnie, Ratani Ukore, Ice Papali'i, even Opachich has me thinking that they could struggle, especially defensively this season, which is why I have them dipping a bit. The biggest recruit for me is Josh Hodgson, of course. If they can get a fraction of what he was like back in the day, they should be sweet inside the 8. I'm keen to see how he gels with Dylan Brown and Mitch Moses. You know, in terms of playing styles, I don't think they're a good match, as Hodgson's the type to overplay his hand a bit or dominate the game a bit. I'm interested to see if he will be given the rights or if they'll play around him. At 5th, I've got the North Queensland Cowboys, coming off an outstanding 2022, proving a majority of the people wrong, myself included. Because the improvement was so drastic last season, I don't see them getting any better. I'm super interested to see how players who had breakout seasons last year go this year. You've got Jeremiah Nanai, who's locked down a long-term deal. You've got Reece Robson, Ruben Cotter. I have no doubts Cotter will keep excelling. Drinkwater, Dearden, they've got a solid side, not to mention Holmes, Petahiku having probably his best season, I'd say. With how good they were last season, I think they'll be somewhat easier to figure out for these top teams. The top 4. At 4th, I've got the South Sydney Rabbitohs. No new recruits. They have a stable and experienced 1 to 17 essentially. But yeah, if Latrell can iron out his defensive wrinkles, they are going to kill it once again this year. Not to mention Lockie Ilias, bit of experience, knows what to expect. Cameron Murray, Cody Walker, need I say more? Again, another team I'm excited to see play this year. At 3rd, I've got the Cronulla Sharks. Like the Bunnies, they got a solid core group. They've got one bloke coming in, Oregon Galfusi. And the players they've lost, no disrespect, but they don't really impact the team if I'm being honest. For me at least. They're giving off early Penrith Panthers vibes. With their core group getting reps with each other, we saw how good they could be in attack, and their defense is a little questionable at times, but as a unit, I think they'll continue to impress. 2nd, I've got the Sydney Roosters. They probably have one of the best, if not the best team on paper. Personally, if they don't finish in the top 4, that's a bit of a failed season. The biggest talking point is obviously Brandon Smith and how he'll go, how Robbo intends to use him. Even though they have all these stars in their team, they have looked a little disjointed in the past. It's that old adage of having too many cooks in the kitchen. The thing is, they can get away with something like that because they have genuine game breakers in Joey Manu, James Tedesco, and now Brandon Smith. Throw in their aerial specialists, they'll be dunking on the outsiders and the fringe teams. And coming in at first, obviously, your minor premiers, I have the Penrith Panthers. Massive omissions in Viliame Kikau, Api Koroisau, but even without those boys, I think they've shown enough over the years that they'll be able to adapt without them. I have them in first for a couple of things. That is their defense and their suffocating style of play. Don't get me wrong, they will lose a lot in their attack with no Api and Vili. Just the presence of Vili on the edges is monumental. That loss was definitely felt in that game against St. Helens. and without Uppy keeping defenders on their toes, their attack can get a little too predictable. I haven't seen much of Sonny Luke play, but they do say he's dynamic enough. But for me, it's I think Tyrone Peachy, he could potentially fill that void of unpredictability coming off the bench. But like I said at the start, I think their defense and their style of play is enough to grind out these teams towards the top of the ladder. So this is it. My full 1-17 definitely went over time, but I do hope you boys enjoyed. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Drop your ladder predictions. Don't forget to run and shred that like button, and I'll see you later.